Okay, you should be all set.
Okay, nice. So, hello everyone, and thank you, Kathy. So, this is our third Open Office Hours, and I want to welcome you to the fourth module. You should have successfully by now completed the orientation model, the first model, and the second model. For the third model, it's for me to grade them this week, probably in the weekend as usual. But let's discuss the fourth model. So, we have two big axes, which are assessing your leadership capabilities. This is very specific to each learner. So this model is focusing on you specifically, not the entire organization, on you as a learner. And then the second thing is identifying your strengths and weaknesses. So when you read the content, this is like very straightforward objectives. So when you read the content, the only individual you need to focus on and keep in your mind is yourself as a leader. And if you are not already in a leadership position, that's perfectly fine. You are taking this course to probably have that in the near future or prepare yourself in the future. So whatever details you encounter in this module, just try to write it down on a piece of paper. I usually use sticky notes on my laptop, not actually using a pen. And try to reflect and be honest with yourself. Is this me or not? And I would say capitalize on your strengths and focus on how to improve your weaknesses. It's not one of the hard modules, but what I find challenging about it is how to have an honest discussion with yourself. And this is what most successful leaders do, is reflecting, is how to sit with yourself, with your thoughts, and put in your mind your own organization, whatever organization that you have, even your family. Your family is an organization too. And see things clearly. That will take time and practice. For me personally, I'm currently doing meditation, and I'm telling everybody about that. It's been 24 days, and I'm doing meditation in the morning. And after the meditation, I start to reflect about the things I have, the challenges I have in my life, and how to tackle them as a professional. Usually, I'm obsessed about work, so it's mostly me thinking about work. And then in the afternoon, I'll do yoga before coming back home. And after the yoga, I'll go to workout. And I'm hearing a lot of big CEOs, especially in big tech, and even not even in big tech, but most of the people I'm listening to are US based, and all of them are adopting these kind of things. And for the longest time, I was like, why on earth do you do that? Why you do meditation? I never get yoga. It's like yoga people make me laugh. But then I said, this is like a very common point between all these successful individuals. And then I was like, what are they exactly doing? Are they software engineers like me? And then I realized all of them are high up the hierarchy in a big leadership positions. And all of them are practicing meditation and some forms of yoga. Of course, this is not a shaman or a guru or a yogi, and the course is not about that. But this is how you reflect about the content, how you see the content, how you visualize the content in your head. Do not forget, this is highly accomplished professors, and they've been for the industry at least for 30 years. And sometimes a phrase or word can just give you a light that you have never seen, but you need to be calm in your thoughts and reflect on them. So you can't forget about the yogi shaman things that I was talking about, but it's one of the main things I'm hearing the biggest leaders that are running the show in our modern day world are doing. And it helped them progress while reading various books This is not the place to discuss those books, but that's a standard practice they are doing after consulting a content. So most of you are familiar with the New York best-selling books, and they will be going through that very heavy, rich content. And then what they do is meditate, do yoga, and reflect about those ideas, because they translate long years of other people's experiences. So for me, as a young leader, I will be why I'm reinventing the wheel when I have like Professor Ancona and Professor Penton telling me what to do. I'm not usually what to do. We are not 100% in the same track, but through their experiences, I will gain a lot of time. But how can I reflect on that rich content? Is by, at least for at this moment, by doing meditation and yoga and be clear with my thought and visualize clearly the content I'm reading, not just reading, but reflect on it. So this is my this is the idea, new ideas I've been wrestling with lately. Please feel free to tell me what you've been wrestling with lately. And this is the way for me as a young leader to progress. I will not say professionally, because now I'm more focused on the personal aspect of myself. And another point I have seen, so I'm one of the biggest fan of Lex Friedman podcast. He's an MIT research. Of course, Professor Pentland know him and they know each other. So it's the second biggest podcast in the world, and they have a dedicated AI podcast when they bring AI leaders and figures. And most of them are developing these personal sides of them. So even when they, especially the American-based entrepreneurs and executives, they will be telling you about their personal lives and how that reflect in their work, instead of the classical school when the professional life is reflected in the personal life. Most of them, they will start to talk about their families first, their relationship first, their own hobbies, how they are developing themselves as leaders through personal pursuits, and then how that is translating to their own organizations. So these kind of things have been on my mind for a while. I want to share that with you. It's not by reading a book or attending a course is going to change you. It's actually when you as a person grow with that content, and that growth will be reflected in your own organization. So those two are the two main outcomes of this module 4. Now we will go to the capstone project, and afterwards, please feel free to ask whatever question you have. I'm not necessarily directed to the course. We can debate subjects, hustle about ideas, exchange, and this is like the purpose of the open office hours. It's not just to answer plain questions about the course content. But first things first, and I think we are in the second, is the capstone project, which is the most important part. I will go through the questions and I will tell you our expectations from you in your own submissions. But for that, take a sip. So in module 3, each group identified a potential solution for the problem that you have identified in module 2. This week, each group will discuss the implications for implementing the project. And the word discuss the implications is an actual discussion. We are trying to trigger the discussions within each group. We are not looking for somebody who's trying to just type an answer. No, you have highly professional and qualified people within your group, and you can reach out in Town Square if you want to network with the rest. And it's a really great place to tackle these discussions. And one of the things I have asked for is like, go with crazy ideas. A crazy idea never failed, because a crazy idea is in its nature is impossible. So if you scratch the surface, you have scratched the surface of the impossible. And if you reach some success in it, then it's no longer impossible. And that's why, for me, at least, I see the impossible projects less scary, because the basis is you're gonna fail, but in the pursuit, you have already learned so much that is no longer a failure. But if you pursue a mundane, boring challenge, then I think the pressure is more. So at least for me, that's what I do as a young leader. I try to set the bar really high. I pursue that really high bar. And then even if I don't reach it, I will always be above average. But if I set the bar to average and then I don't have the 100% out of it, I would be really disappointed. And I did not outsmart anything or anyone. And this is what leaders are expected to do. If you are average, you are not a leader. I'm sorry. Because an average individual, they cannot lead other average individuals. We need people who are more qualified than the average to do so. And leaders' objectives are not as regular people objectives. Most people will be focusing on their own, and the leaders are expected to take care of their own people. So already their bar is really high. And for me, it's very logical to pursue something impossible because the progress is going to be exponential comparing to just having some average objective. That's one of the things I have asked for in the beginning of the program. But of course, everybody is free to choose whatever they want, while keeping in mind that 50% of the content is AI related and the other 50% is leadership related. And this was triggered by reading the Capstone project by saying discuss. It's a real discussion. That's what you're going to win. In 6 modules, those 6 rich discussions in the Capstone project that can change your professional career and make you do the next step. So the first question will be, to successfully implement your group chosen tool, what might individual leaders have to do? So the chosen tool, it can be a cloud service. And this is what I always advise everybody. Please research cloud services. You have Amazon Web Services, you have Microsoft Azure, you have Google Cloud Platform. You also have Heroku, you have Alibaba, and you have other major cloud providers, but let's stick for the first 3, because those are the tools that will make your life easier, and they are very manageable. And many leaders and organizations, they will be like, it's a bit expensive for us. It's actually not. And I never seen an organization survive by building their own. And it's kind of meme for the tech geeks is we say like an expensive architecture is a bad one, is a bad architecture, because you will end up spending more money on the bad architecture than having initial good investment in a good one. And a good architecture is a seamless architecture. You will not have issue with it, but a bad architecture will always manifest itself. Now at Microsoft, Google, and Amazon's, they have thousands and thousands of engineers. They are top-notch. And many other companies are complaining about that. So I had a discussion with one of the learners, and it was very insightful last week in the open office hours. And he was like, the big tech companies are taking most of the talent. Yeah, and not all those talents are having actual work to do in those big tech companies. They can just be, at least in consultancy companies, we say they are staying on the bench until they find the assignment. And that's the big tech strategy. The day they need to start a new thing, they will immediately start it because they have the brain power to do it. And those people have made sure that their services are bulletproof. It works. It might be a bit expensive, but not using those services is more expensive. Also, the chosen tool can be a methodology. Some companies, most of IT companies, they will use Scrum, a Scrum for teams, and on the bigger scale, they will use SAFe. It's a scaled agile framework, and you can think of it as a big Scrum. So Scrum is teams of 5 to 6. And if you expand it, then you will have safe, but on the level of, on the organizational level. Do not take this word by word. I'm trying to break it down, not necessarily the best way, but it's something worth searching for. The other thing, some organizations are using Prince2, and it's a bit outdated. So most of the Prince2 folks have switched to Safe. The other one is TOGAF, I think, but I never had a discussion about it or experienced it. It's another methodology to organize a company in an agile way. And they are most known for IT companies, but other companies are adopting other variations. Now, for these methodologies that go hand in hand with the concept of X teams, there are 32 of them, maybe even more. The variations are too many. For me, I always emphasize on the crisp DM. So if you have an AI project, it's best if you use the crisp DM methodology, and it's what I have been using for 3 years. Then now shifting with working with other clients, they are using Scrum for innovation and research and development projects. I think it does not really work that well. So the tool can be a software tool, can be a methodology, and how you as a leader can implement that. Also, you can go back to the course content, read more about the sense making. Some leaders are not empathetic to their staff. And I have experienced that. I worked in a company when, like, the managers, whenever you confront them about any issues, thank you, Kathy, have a good night too. So in that company, everybody is expendable. Any issue you face, they will be like, well, we wish you good luck. Eventually, the whole team is out. You have 20 people in the research working on innovation and research development projects are out. So that's their biggest achievement. Nobody to have in the team. Nobody. I was enjoying working on those projects, but from the leadership style I have seen, it was not horrible, but it was not a good place to grow as an individual. And I would go with more empathetic leaders than somebody who's like very strict. Also, one of the concepts that Professor Ancona always talks about is the sense making. It's really detailed in the course content. You can check that out. And that's my take for the first question. Of course, I'll give you the floor. We can exceed the 30 minutes. We can go up to an hour, no problem for me. It's nighttime in Amsterdam. So, oh, yes, please go ahead. I'm sorry, I cannot read your name correctly.
No, do not worry at all. I know I go by Patrick to make it easier. Now, you mentioned Scrum and Safe. I'm kind of familiar with both, and I know them a little bit. Now, you mentioned also the CRISP. Are you talking about CRISP DM that is being used, or something different? Because I haven't heard of that, and it might be crucial if I'm trying to implement anything.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I'm talking about CRISP DM is cross-industry standard for data mining. And we use it in AI project because data mining is like umbrella term for a lot of things. It can be analytics, advanced analytics, AI with its subtypes, and it's very useful. So you are right on that.
All right, thanks. So yeah, that's something that I would like to look into, because what I found from my customers is sometimes Scrum is not working for them well, just because they cannot achieve what used to be achievable for a group of developers trying to prototype or do some sort of software in a short cadences, when they need to have some analysis and so forth. So there are different phases in data project. That's what I understood. That was always a challenge, that analysis is not a part of development and so forth. And I think I'll just look in depth. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you have any other questions or reflections, that would be really rich. But I do agree with you, and it's a great thing that you have acknowledged that, because many leaders do not want to. Scrum is established like now for very long years, and they don't want to explore a new territory. And if you are working in R&D or in innovation, that will not work. But they are doing so hard and pushing so hard to make Scrum and Scrumban work. But it's good that you acknowledge that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, really eye-opening.
Thank you. So another thing now, I remember, I think at Tesla they use Kanban. Kanban. So practitioners they have Fusion, Scrum, and Kanban, and now we have a concept. It's called Scrumban. Most people are using Scrumban, and they refer to it as just Scrum, and others they will refer to it as just Kanban, and they will try to solve anything using the Scrumban. They think is the best combination. For AI, I don't think so, because a research paper can take you one day and it can take you a couple of years. How can you put that in 2 weeks sprint? And then they will tell you, oh, this is the story, that we need the story of each sprint. Yeah, well, if you are developing a website and try to develop a feature or a button, you can, of course, do that. But if you are trying to fine-tune an AI model, I wish you the best of luck. And that's my criticism about the subject. Moving on to the second question. How might someone's leadership signature influence their choices? Well, I will give you the example of Apple. I'm not a fan of their products, but I think they are a great company. So everybody knows Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs is somebody who does not compromise. Is the person that go 100% or 1,000% for something he believes in. And along the way, he crushed a lot of leaders in his organization. Eventually, he was kicked out of Apple. He founded Pixar. And this is like not, I'm trying to put it in a nutshell. Things do not actually work that way. You can watch a lot of the documentaries about the subject. Oh, yeah. And next, thank you for that. And eventually, Apple lost track of their vision and mission. So guess what they did? They brought back Steve Jobs. And unfortunately, we have lost him. And that was sad. But having Tim Cook as a CEO, a lot of people have grilled him. So I started my consultancy career by having a boot camp in an American university in Dubai. And the consultant that was training me, he was like laughing so hard at Tim Cook choices. And for me, I was intrigued. Why is that? Because he was comparing two different leadership styles, and he just did not like the leadership signature of Tim Cook. Now, I've been watching a lot of documentaries to get to the bottom of the subject, especially that I've been trained with by the hand of a very known consultant. He worked for the biggest consultancies in the world, the biggest projects, and I get to the bottom of it. If Steve Jobs was still on the head of Apple as a company, it will not have thrived during the Donald Trump presidential era. Because as an alpha type for Steve Jobs, he will crash and conflict every time he runs into the Trump administration. But so many CEOs, especially the big tech companies, they withdraw themselves and distance themselves from Donald Trump, except one. And this one special guy, he was on numerous occasions praised by the president, is Tim Cook. And he calls him my friend. Now we know everybody distanced themselves from Donald Trump. Tim Cook took advantage. And he brought back many jobs to the US. I don't think Steve Jobs would have done that. And that would have lost Apple maybe its position in the market. So many analysts from the big banks in the US are praising the decisions that he have done. And I think Apple got lucky with the leadership of Tim Cook, which his signature is very different from Steve Jobs. Of course, this is an example, a story. I'm sure you have, we can debate it, but that's the kind of thing we look forward into the assignment to see. Even your storytelling capabilities. Tell us a story. It does not need to be true. If you want it to be true, you can keep pursuing it after the end of the program. And we had individuals doing that. One of them now is one of the top 3 startups in UK. And I've been involved with her to design her system. It was amazing. Now she is waiting for funding. And you can think of this course as an opportunity to have that kind of thing, but give us examples, give us data, give us how you tell your story and the assignments. Try to be fun. A fun leader is somebody who people will move when he moves, talk when he talks, and react when he reacts. Now, for the third question, what would teams have to do? Well, it depends on the team that you have. For me, for this question, I will just say, if you are tackling a new challenge, you need to educate yourself on the challenge. So you need to invest money for your team to access reading materials, reading content, and focus on that. So many organizations, they will be like, we're gonna give you 4 hours a week. Well, that's a recipe for failure. 4 hours a week, they usually give it on a Friday afternoon when nobody is actually doing actual work. It's one of the best schemes I have seen in big companies. They will give you the 4 hours on a Friday afternoon. You ain't working that time, my friend, anyway. So it was really wise for them to, okay, I will give them those 4 hours. In AI, R&D and innovation, that will never work. With all due respect for many people's decision and leaders' decisions, and you as a learners for your future choices. Now for the last question, and then the floor will be yours. What can leaders and or teams do to make sure AI is accepted as it provides the tool to perform tasks differently and better? This is the classical topic of the fear of AI. You need to educate your employees about the importance of it. So if for one day, so I worked with an investment bank and like a business analyst, they do a lot of manual job and they work 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day, and for us engineers, we work 8 hours and then we eventually only work 4 to 6 hours, and they are so jealous. We were in the same open space and they were so jealous. They will be like, how can you do that? Why we are working 10 hours? So me and my manager were like, how about we automate the processes that you are doing, and you can actually focus on what makes money for our employers. Now what happened is like we spent 3 years automating these processes in intelligent way. And now these analysts are focusing on financial issues, banking, investments, things that I don't know and they do not want to talk about. But what I know for sure, they were happy from spending 6 hours doing mundane, boring things to actually putting more work into things that can bring money. Kat, thank you, Kat, for being with us. So that's what leaders can do, is allocate time and resources for the teams to learn and evolve, especially in R&D related projects. Now 30 minutes have passed of me trying to explain what is this week about and how I'm seeing things. Now the floor is yours. You can ask me any questions, and not specifically to the course content. If you have something in your organization, you heard something in the news, please feel free to be my guest.
So you have a kind of a vague question about the leadership, and it is connected to AI a little bit, but just a little bit. As you just explained the example of Tim Cook and Steve Jobs and different leadership in different circumstances, and you need to wear different hats on daily basis. Sometimes you need to be more economist, sometimes a little bit more coach. We know that in some organizations which are kind of hierarchical, and they require different style of leadership, and sometimes this leadership is more managerial and not so coachy. That's okay. We know that it needs to evolve, and an organization needs to be ready to absorb the new aspects of leadership. When we are introducing AI or any change, but AI in particular, we need them to change quickly in order to release the benefits of having AI. Otherwise, they'll never release the benefit. They'll create enormous cost, and they'll blame, consultancy, the tooling itself. People will struggle. People will leave. I know it's like terrible scenario, and just like a plug of Black Death coming, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's AI." So, is there? When I know that there are three leadership styles that bring as advocacy in discourse. What if you cannot establish these? Have you met that situation that no, we cannot just do it? We need to implement the product, we need to implement the AI, and companies willing to do it, but they're not willing to reorganize. What then?
That's an excellent question, and it makes me remember of what Neron in Rome have done. At a certain point in Rome, it's a it's a shocking example and analogy, but that's what the market is telling us. So when Rome was in its last years and it was falling apart, what they have focused on is circuses everywhere to distract the people. And Neron so Rome at that time, when you have an empire falling, of course you're gonna find it's gonna be filthy and everything is corrupt. At some point, Neron was like, yeah, let the city burn down. Sometimes you need that. Some empires have a rebirth, some do not, but that's a cycle. And the market, like for the average age of Fortune 500 companies now is dropped to 24 years. And when we are talking about the Fortune 500 in the US, they're as big as other entire countries' economies. So I'm from Tunis, I'm Tunisian. Our GDP is 50 billion. 50 billion is nothing. I was listening to Zuckerberg last night, and he was like, we throw 10 billion for the Oculus project in just 1 year. And that's like really ridiculous. So Fortune 500, and then you are talking about the average age dropping to 24. This is like the life cycle, but how those get, so now there is a very smart scheme. I think it's been going on for a long time. I think mostly after the privatizing many governmental agencies all over the world, starting from UK with Margaret Thatcher, I think in the 70s. When you have a falling company, it's acquired by another company, and then they join the logos, they make an abbreviation of the names. So Arthur DeLittle, I think, was the biggest consultancy company. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then you have the big four. It couldn't keep up. It got burned to the ground. But now, like the smart thing is how to rebrand it, like put it in 4 different companies. And then in the other example, if in 2008, when the world economy collapsed, you have many companies you have many banks that have been acquired by other banks. So this is another way you got burned to the ground, but you still in the market under a different name, and many of them are using the same name. I was you will be really surprised how many big brands you hear about now. They are owned by hedge funds and banks, and they at some point they were failing. So when you fail to restructure a behemoth, which is ordinary, is too big to restructure. That's why countries fall. These are as big as countries' economies. Sometimes the smart solution is to merge, and this is like the last resort when you go bankrupt. And I don't actually believe they go bankrupt.
Well, they know how to do it, so it is
Yeah, it's like if you are a CEO, I should not be involved in these kind of conversation, but they will get a very fat bonus, and that's actually smart. Because you are in the end saving jobs. So you might get fired today under the name of the company X, but X was acquired by Y, and now you are an employee of Y. So I'm sure you know Ernst & Young. It's one of the big four. Do you know who owns Ernst & Young?
No, sorry.
Yeah, me too. Like I thought they are by their own, and it's owned by Capgemini.
No.
It's a consultancy company. I was really like, what? And even Capgemini owns many big brands under it. Sometimes it's a rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
So for the example of Rome, when you burn down to ashes cities or a country, it's also a good thing. Maybe the CEO will have a heart attack, but that's only one individual. You end up actually saving the ecosystem. So that's my take on the subject. It can be a little bit tough, but at least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think it is a good analogy, kind of a harsh in a way, but I understand where you're coming from. You cannot teach mindset of these people if there is no will of going through different approach and absorbing it and accepting that in order to do it, you need to do it in that way, and you need to unlearn a few things. Otherwise, everyone wants to have benefits without going to the gym. That really doesn't work like that.
Exactly. You have summarized it in 10 seconds. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Matthew, if you want to share with us any thoughts?
I would just say it's all about mindfulness. Like you said, I've taken some leadership courses about mindfulness, incorporates meditation, and just being more empathetic about the workforce and leading with an empathetic mind. Everybody's going through a different experience during the pandemic, so you can't relate to everybody. You can empathize with them, and I think that's one of the key traits to be an effective leader, is be able to understand and relate to other people. And if you can do that well, you can get the more difficult stuff done. Like you said, if you try to lead with command and control, it's going to be harder to get the troops to move where you need them to move. So understanding what people are going through, learning how to motivate them through each of the different motivation, what drives them, money, prestige, recognition, using those different tactics, I think you'll be an effective leader.
Yeah, thank you for the confirmation.
So you're correct. A lot of the leadership courses today are starting to incorporate meditation into the course. There's apps on your on the phone that you can use to help with that as well.
Yeah, thank you, and I think it was a great session tonight.
Yep.
Really looking forward for next week. And meanwhile, direct message me or post your question in any group, and we will try to strike a conversation.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
See you next week. Goodbye.
All right, bye-bye.